Right, it's panel time, and our first panel today will focus on how platforms and networking solution can support an adaptive model. It's called Platforms and Networking Needs in an App World. The host for this session will be Peter Wilson. Peter is Technical Design Authority at IT Lab and has worked in the IT industry for more than 26 years. Peter's role is to be the Tom Ford of the technology solutions design world, designing and ensuring a perfect fit based on organisational needs. So please welcome to the stage our very own Tom Ford, Peter Wilson.
Good morning, and thank you for the Tom Ford reference. I just have to admit that I did have to Google him just to try and work out actually who Tom Ford was. I've probably just ditch my street cred, but never mind. As Susie said, I've worked in IT for over 25 years now, and luckily for me, over the last 10, I've been really involved with clients to try and understand their business challenges and really address technology to meet those business challenges. And as you can imagine, the technology available to us has really changed over that 25-year period. And over that period, I think there's been a number of constraints that we've had to deal with within the design world that have really limited what we've been able to do. So what I thought I'd do is actually step back a little bit in history and take you on a little bit of a journey to where we are today to really show you some of those constraints and potentially how now I feel that we've actually got to the level where we can actually build systems pretty much without constraints, because I think we've got the technology available to us. It was all about green screens. Do we all remember the green screens with mainframe days? And it was all fairly limited, really, as to what we could do with our technology. You know, the application set wasn't really there from a screen point of view. But, you know, the PC was invented, and obviously that came with a raft of new applications that were available to us. So things like, you know, WordPerfect, if you remember those days, and Lotus 123. I'm not sure I'm supposed to mention Lotus, but never mind. But it gave us the ability to have much more different applications that we could use, and, you know, the productivity that people gained from those applications was immense at that particular point in time. So at that point, you're running your applications on your device, all's great. But what happened was there was another limitation in our design, meaning that we actually needed to centralize our systems back again, because we all needed to share that data that we were all producing from the WordPerfects and the Lotuses. So things like thin client technologies were born. So we'd use, you know, thin client technologies to centralize it all down and push it back out to our own devices, which from a user point of view sort of changed technology a bit and actually made it a bit more limiting from the user point of view, because they were stuck with what the IT team gave them. Great for the IT team, but a little bit limiting from the users. Well, today I think we're moving from that again, and the advent of the cloud means that obviously we've got the ability now to potentially push the application set back out to the users again, to give people that myriad of different applications that opens it up so we could be much more productive again. You know, if we talk about our personal lives, obviously we've talked about potentially using dating apps that we would in our personal lives, you know, Facebook, Twitter, and all the rest of it, and we use them because it's easy. But we've also got a choice as a user. We can pick the best app that works for us. If the one we've picked first doesn't work, well, it doesn't matter, we'll change it, we'll get another one. It's easy. Now, in a business world, wouldn't that be fantastic if we had that sort of choice, that sort of productivity? From a user point of view, fantastic. From an IT-backed point of view, little bit of a challenge, because we need to have that business wrapper. We need to control access to your crown jewels, your data. Yeah? That absolutely has to have some protection. So we need to build a nice business wrapper around all of that to protect that data. If we think about all of these apps that are popping up everywhere, all these business applications, they're popping up, we can use them, you know, users are popping up anywhere across the world. We've got all of that, how the world could look. And that really, I think, is what we're talking about today as being the goal that we get to. We're all on a journey at the moment into this app-driven world. And I just want to try and understand from you, where are you? Where is your network on that journey? So which of the answers on your screen in front of you best describes the way you use your IT services? You know, where do you consume them from? I am seeing clients that have got fully app-driven networks. They're fairly few and far between today, but absolutely it is happening. But I'm also seeing the other side where we've got organizations that are limited really in terms of having to have systems on premise. Now what I'm going to do is actually ask the next question, that is, if there's an issue stopping you getting to that sort of app world, what would be the issue? Legacy applications and architecture. Some detail there around not understanding the options available. Now, what the panel session today is hopefully going to cover is to give you the knowledge that actually that won't be a blocker after this session. Okay, welcome guys. What I'd like to do is get you to introduce yourselves. So just a quick introduction of who you are and what you do. So Stuart, if we could start with yourself.
Stuart Pepper, I'm the CIO at Phaidon International. We're a recruitment firm globally across the STEM industries. We are based out of the US, Europe and Asia. My role, joining a year ago, is to come in and to provide some direction around technology, ensure we're getting best value, and really to lay out a strategy for the future.
Fantastic, thank you. Rajesh.
My name is Rajesh Ram. I am co-founder and chief customer officer at Egnyte. We offer a comprehensive solution for customers to manage all their unstructured data, which is content. So a lot of our customers move that to the cloud. They use our application to collaborate between their offices and employees. And more so now with GDPR impending or imminent, there's a lot of governance capability we provide as well. My role as the Chief Customer Officer is to engage with our customers and highlight the possibilities and use cases and what the benefits can be, what the architectures could look like. And of course, a big part of that is learning and taking that back to reflect on our product and service.
George, welcome.
I'm here representing Microsoft this morning. I spend my time supporting small and medium organizations around their infrastructure and app innovation specifically. So I work cross-vertical, helping them to kind of modernize their platforms.
Jason.
Jason Wells, Vice President of EMEA and APAC. Ariaka Networks has been around since about 2007 now, and we're not one of the new SD-WAN buzzword vendors.
Obviously, we've talked about the rate of technology change and how potentially it is ever increasing, the rate. And for me, certainly, you know, having to keep up with all of this is just mind-blowingly hard at the moment. New developments are happening daily, weekly. It's just frightening. From your guys' point of view, from a tech company point of view, how are you seeing that? How does that work in your worlds?
We started Egnyte about 10 years back. And I'll use this analogy because we're in the McLaren Center here. For the first 5 or 6 years since we started after we started the company, it was like going from 0 to 60 in 4 hours. We were convincing customers to move to the cloud. I think the innovation in the market from the vendors was also fairly limited. I look at the last 3 or 4 years, it's like 0 to 60 in 5 seconds.
Yeah.
The pace is just unbelievable. I don't think there's a question from a directional standpoint anymore. This is where customers are going. They're going to the cloud. One company might move faster, the other might move slower. And it's a great time to be a technologist.
The sentiment of the adaptive technology model, the speed of innovation and the pace of change is incredible. From a SaaS perspective, I think there's really 2 key benefits. I mean, if we were going to start a brand new organization today, we would use cloud technologies, we would use software tools for the very reality that it makes us more agile as a business, makes us more secure fundamentally, and we can kind of grow and cope with this pace of change that we're seeing globally. As an organization, if we started that new company, we wouldn't do it in the old way necessarily. 2 key benefits. Fundamentally, you have this shared responsibility model, so you're delegating parts of ownership of infrastructure and maintenance and innovation to the vendor and to the managed service provider, and that has fantastic benefits. But also, the second benefit is if you're on this kind of SaaS cloud model, you're getting innovation and technologies drip feeding through. So no longer are you on these kind of long refresh cycles of, I don't get the latest technology for 3 years or 5 years. Actually, what I'm used to at home, I can get relatively instantaneously as and when that new feature is available. That pace of innovation is huge. I can get that with SaaS, which is fantastic.
Jason, from a connectivity point of view, I'm guessing, you know, it's just rapidly changing in your world as well.
If you go back to 2006 and look what Amazon did, that huge shopping behemoth, they said to the world, why are you still constructing your own data centers? Just come and consume some of our capacity. We've got them all over the world. You can easily get to them. So the world tried to do this. Obviously, Microsoft came to the table, Ali Cloud, lots of places to put your things. But where was the consideration of how you reach them? And that's really where things have started to kind of take 2 steps forward and almost 1 step back. It's because people dip into the cloud, they move their applications, and things work really well. when you are close to the data center. But when you have a huge middle mile, continents and oceans between yourself and the user, that's the magic sauce, really. And that's where people really need to think properly around making snap decisions on, oh, let's chase SD-WAN. Yep. Let's grab it and take the first vendor that comes to the table. Do your research is all I will say, is because not all SD-WAN vendors have been created equally.
Stuart, obviously you're on the opposite side of this, so you're obviously the client, you're seeing the vendors come in and speak to you, and you've got to understand that. So from a client's point of view, obviously what is it looking like for you, but also who's driving that change? Is it being driven from the users, the board, the IT team? How's all of that working?
We've talked about the consumerization of technology. Users are driving the ability to take new technology because they're used to being able to do that at home. They're able to go out and subscribe to their own services. You've got the board that are demanding that an IT strategy support the challenges that they're seeing, the growth of business, other strategic points that they need to deliver. And with IT, obviously, the old refresh rates and waiting 6 months for a service pack or something like that are things of the past. So it's a real enabler for the technology departments. The biggest challenge around all of that is the fact that businesses demand change very, very quickly now themselves, because they see the availability of that technology out there. And from a technology management perspective, that's a real challenge in itself, and brings into the picture concerns around security. If you've got consumerization of this technology, people subscribing to things left, right and centre, how does a technology team, how does a business able to keep an eye on where its data is stored? It's connectivity. You know, people are subscribing to a service then complaining that it's not working because we've not got the connectivity in place to support it. It's all of those challenges that are present purely on the basis that things are just coming to market so much quicker.
I don't sit in the same seat as Stuart does, sort of as a receiver and implementer of these technologies. I see it from the other side. You know, when I go back to the first 6 or 7 years, IT was getting dragged into this sort of almost reluctantly. Consumerization, the business users were driving it. This is what I do at home. I want to do it at work. IT was getting dragged in. But now IT has become the change agent. We're seeing that transformation very clearly. And I think it's sifting through the noise and figuring out what to do.
Behind the scenes, we are trying to move to a cloud-first environment because we know that that supports the business. We're about to stand up a Dallas office, and we've done that in the space of 6 weeks. That will be going live in 2 weeks' time. You know, we couldn't do that sort of thing 3, 4, 5 years ago. And a lot of that's been enabled by the likes of Ariaka and their connectivity and some of the other cloud services.
Yeah, I talked about constraints that I've had in my role as a network architect over the years. And one of the real pain points has been unstructured data. How we access it, how we control access to it, it's always been a little bit of a difficult thing to manage. Now, today, I think we've got a myriad of tools out there we can use to get access to that unstructured data. But from a security point of view, obviously, we need to be able to secure access to that.
Data comes up in every conversation, every meeting we have. I guess it's intrinsic value to an organization and how you manage that, finding new and interesting ways of capturing more and more data, right? And it's a very interesting opportunity, I think, for the industry that we're in, mainly through how can you help organizations monetize their data. And if you look at business valuations, data is more valuable than oil. If you look at the valuations of digital companies versus oil companies, it's very interesting. But from a security perspective, to answer your question, if you're adopting some of these technologies and some platforms that are naturally mobilizing your workforce, so Peter made a great point earlier on about how can I work anywhere, anytime from any device. It's fantastic for productivity. By default, your data as an organization has now left the business, right? It's wherever that user is, it's wherever that device is. So how do I put some sort of security around that without putting a detriment to the productivity that I've enhanced? So you can look at lots of different types of tools. I mean, the key one is how do I encrypt data at the file level? So how do I classify data and put permissions on it so that wherever my data goes, I can revoke access, I can see who's opened it, I can see where they were in the world when they opened it, and I can retain some kind of control as an organization, because fundamentally it's my data, it's my IP, I want to control that.
I'm going to make a bold statement that it's actually easier to secure that data in the cloud now compared to what you could do on-premise. On-premise, you had Active Directory, and of course you locked everything down. The data was not easy to move around or access from anywhere. But cloud, you start with the premise that it's easy to move that data around, and you can integrate with Active Directory, your single sign-on, access controls and permissions. Key management is very ubiquitous now, whether the vendor controls the key or the customer controls the key. Auditability, like he said, someone accesses this file over in the States or down in Central America, and you know exactly what happened. You can classify your data, understand what's sensitive, what's not. All those technologies now exist in the cloud. Compare that with how hard it was to turn on auditing on a Windows server to understand what happened on a Windows file share. It's very hard. It slows down the server. I'm sure there's a lot of people here that tried to implement some kind of DLP, leak prevention technology. How many of those people were successful, got it off the ground? You compare all that, the cloud is just far more simpler, it's far more secure.
The one area really I don't think we've covered around the ATM piece is really the user authentication elements of any system. Obviously, we've got all of these different cloud elements up there. But what are your thoughts on the single sign-on capabilities? How are we able to achieve all of that? Is it working for us today?
In the context of a scenario where you might be using lots of different SaaS providers to meet a particular need, you might have people that are at their creative best using particular tools, and as a business you want to embrace those. The single best way to bind the experience together is at the identity layer. It's making sure that you have a consistent kind of single sign-on experience across it, regardless of whether it's an on-premise application or it's a SaaS-based tool, because not everything is moving to the cloud in the same rate, as we saw, I guess, from the feedback around hybrid, right? There are some workloads that move very quickly. It makes sense to do so. So depending on the technical and commercial reasoning, you're probably going to have a mixed base of workloads. So identity is the best way to do that. So single sign-on, thinking about extra layers of security like multi-factor authentication, you can apply those across all your workloads.
I would submit that pretty much any enterprise-grade cloud application does connect either to an Active Directory that's on-premise, which pretty much every enterprise customer has, and a lot of them are adding that SAML-based identity layer, which is sort of in the cloud, right? Whether it's any provider, it's ADFS, they're embracing Azure AD. So we're seeing that large-scale migration start to occur. But that identity layer combined with the Active Directory sort of powering that behind it is what we see as sort of that common backbone. And once you have that, people feel more comfortable.
How can you make sure that all users, no matter where they are, get the same experience from cloud application? I think that's a key thing that we need to understand.
The consistent user experience, if you break things down, when you are 5, 10, 15, 20 milliseconds between the user, latency-wise, and the data source they're accessing, it doesn't really matter how you connect. The internet is absolutely fine. MPLS is fine. When you have 200, 300, 400 milliseconds of middle mile, which is made up of MPLS with peering, or dare I say, it's the native internet with all of the vagaries that it brings to the table, this is the root cause of application inconsistencies and bad user experience. And worst of all, Stuart's IT help desk lighting up because they can't get onto this, and this. So if you work with a vendor which has a private layer 2 network which spans the globe, which removes and changes the internet or MPLS from the middle mile in a peerless, secure fashion, and has technologies such as TCP optimization built into the network, and also, I'll be a little bit biased and say has patents around multi-segment TCP optimization, it gives a very consistent user experience regardless of where that user resides versus the data. And that's a very, very high level. That's why I mentioned that not all SD-WAN vendors are the same. It's the middle mile which solves the problem. Work with somebody that has a large footprint. Work with somebody that has a peerless network. If you're augmenting away from MPLS, make sure that the solution that you choose in the SD-WAN world can coexist with where you are today, because MPLS isn't going away. It's going to be with us for the next 3 to 5 years minimum, just like Frame Relay was before everybody migrated to MPLS, and it fixed all of our voice and video worlds 15 years ago. Just go in with your eyes open and do your due diligence, and speak to your peers.
There's two key parts to get across when you think about performance of a globally distributed application or technology. The first one is fundamentally the infrastructure you cannot escape. Where is my nearest data center delivering this technology or this application? It's a bit like the value of the backbone of the internet being invented. You could innovate once the backbone existed, so you need huge investment from global public cloud providers in order to help you guys to start creating the apps and services that you want. So from our perspective, we have a significant investment in infrastructure globally. So we have 36 regions, data center regions, another 6 that have been announced but not operational yet. Each region has, I think, a minimum of 2 data centers. Each data center is 300,000 servers each. So likewise, everything's connected globally from a networking perspective, so big pipes under the oceans, that kind of thing. And we also have dedicated lines into our data centers as well. So if you didn't choose to go over the internet, you could have a direct, we call it express route, but a bit like an MPLS, you could have a direct route in. So fundamentally, the infrastructure, where is my nearest data center? We have the largest footprint globally for public cloud providers. The second one is actually the technologies themselves. So if you're consuming SaaS-based tools, or you're looking to leverage platform services to build your own technology. So if you're thinking about building a new application and you want to launch into global markets, how do I do that really quickly? Well, you need to also think about, are the platform tools conducive to global distribution? So a great example is something like our Cosmos database, Cosmos DB, which is designed for app developers to want to launch an application very quickly to a global audience. So if it's like Pokemon Go and it just explodes globally, they want to make sure that the data that is accessing it is very, very close to each user, regardless of where they are. So it's definitely the infrastructure, you cannot escape that. But also, if you're building things, there are the tools in place that are being built with a global distribution in mind, because you can reach those audiences very quickly.
We have that legacy product issue where we can't get everything up into the cloud, or we've got cloud services that are tenanted, and so they're only served out of certain data centers. So you've still got that challenge of being able to bring a user experience back to a geographic location, could be halfway around the world. The Ariaka network for us solved that issue. We were able to put something in place with them that provided us where we were right on the cusp of a workable solution in Asia, and we've now got a very, very strong user experience out there and a business that's happy. We're able to stand up offices without needing to worry about expensive MPLS grade connectivity that can take weeks, months to be able to deploy. These sorts of technologies, be it cloud, if you've got something in a sort of a localized environment, or the Ariaka platform, give you that stability of performance, that user experience is then enhanced.
One more question. I think this one is actually really key. And it's all about ROIs. It's about how do you see that clients are able to create that ROI of moving into those cloud-type applications?
Well, for us, when I joined, the technology had been through quite a disruptive period. It was a question of finding a solution quickly, because the business was arguably hemorrhaging money. We were having long periods of downtime as a result of poor connectivity. So the ROI kind of takes care of itself in that sense. We're spending, $1,000, $2,000, $10,000 a month on a solution that provides the service that we need to get to our users. Then that's money in the bank, because we were losing far more than that just through lost productivity.
Thank you all, guys. I'm afraid we have run out of time there, so thank you very much.